The Extraordinary Phenomenon Investigations Council presents Epic Voyages. Come join us as we enter and experience the great mysteries of the world with tonight's host,
Laurel Tague. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on Epic Voyages. This is Laurel Tague, and I'm going to be hosting this evening, and my guest is Gary David, author and independent researcher of southwestern archaeological ruins and rock art for nearly 25 years. His nonfiction books about the ancestral Pueblo cultures of Arizona and New Mexico include, there's 3 of them, The Orion Zone, Ancient Star Cities of the American Southwest, Eye of the Phoenix, Mysterious Visions and Secrets of the American Southwest, and his new book, The Kivas of Heaven, Ancient Hopi Star Lore. All of these are available from Adventures Unlimited Press. Mr. David earned a master's degree from the University of Colorado and is a former college professor. He's also a poet, with numerous volumes published and a professional lead guitarist and vocalist. His articles and interviews have appeared in many magazines, some of which are The Ancient American, Atlantis Rising, Fate, Phoenix, which is an Italian publication, Mysteries, which is a Greek publication, Eric von Daniken's Switzerland publication called Sagenhafte Zeiten, UFO, and World Explorer. He's also appeared in anthologies such as The Lost Knowledge of the Ancients, a Graham Hancock reader, and Underground, the Disinformation Guide to Ancient Civilizations. Gary continues to give lectures and international radio interviews and has recently appeared on the History Channel on the series Decoded and Ancient Aliens, which is one of my favorites. His website is www.theorionzone.com. I'll be putting that on the chat box in just a second. Gary and his wife and an aging kitty cat all live together in rural northern Arizona, where he reports that the skies are still relatively pristine. Gary, I thank you so much for joining us tonight. How are you doing?
Thanks, Laurel. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm fine.
How's the weather doing out there?
Well, it's sunny and a bit cold. We've had strange weather out here in Arizona. It's been a very dry winter, and it's just very cold today for some reason. So hopefully we'll warm up.
Are you up near the Flagstaff area?
No, I'm a little south of Flagstaff,
okay.
Between the towns of Prescott and Flagstaff. Still in northern Arizona, still within reach of the Hopi country, but not as far south as Phoenix.
Yeah, that's beautiful country up there. I love it. Gary, if you don't mind, let's start out with you telling us, how did you become interested? I read in your bio on your website that you actually come from Ohio, where you said the only Indians that you used to know about were the baseball team, right?
That's right. I've been out west most of my adult life, though. I lived in South Dakota for a number of years, and we probably should back up about 25 years when I first got interested in this star knowledge of the ancient people. I was teaching on the Pine Ridge Reservation, teaching the Lakota Sioux English on the reservation, and I was also doing sweat lodges with the native people there, and also witnessing their very interesting Sundance ritual. And I was fighting a corporation called Honeywell, and they were trying to put a munitions testing site in the Black Hills of South Dakota, which is the sacred center of the Lakota world. And I happened to meet a woman named Charlotte Black Elk. Now, Charlotte is the great-granddaughter of the famous Nicholas Black Elk, who wrote the classic Black Elk Speaks.
I've read that. That's a wonderful book.
It's I'd highly recommend that for anyone interested in Native American studies. It's just a beautiful book. It talks about Black Elk and his vision he had as a child, and he was taken up in the spirit world to on top of Harney Peak, and he had this very elaborate vision of the world to come. And I was talking with his great-granddaughter, Charlotte Black Elk, and at the time she was developing a theory about how the Black Hills, which are in western South Dakota, how they resemble a great buffalo. And this buffalo is not only on the earth, but it's also in the sky. The nose of this buffalo is corresponds to the Pleiades in the constellation Taurus. The tail of the buffalo is the star Sirius, the brightest star in the heavens. And the Lakota made these migrations annually to different spots in the Black Hills, and they performed a specific ceremony at a specific time of the year, and this is dedicated to the particular star that the spot corresponds to. So you have this mirroring of earth and sky. The buffalo is both on the earth and in the sky. And at the time, Charlotte was trying to establish an earlier date for the Lakota being in the area than historians traditionally say they are there. The historians say that the Lakota came to the area about 1700 A.D., and Charlotte had a star map on a buffalo hide that showed the stars going back thousands of years in different positions. So she was trying, with this idea of as above, so below, that she was trying to establish a very early date for the Lakota in this region.
Well, since you mentioned as above, so below, that's sort of the sub-theme of your three books. Tell us a little bit about the Hopi and the Orion constellation.
Yeah, sure. I moved down, after living in South Dakota for 15 years, I moved down to Arizona, and I started going to some of the Kachina dances on the Hopi Reservation. Kachinas, for many of your listeners might be familiar with the Kachina dolls that the Hopi carve. These dolls are called Tihuta, and they basically, they're for the kids. They're for instruction to show the different types of spirits, because there are literally hundreds of different types of spirits that the Lakota, that the Hopi have, these Kachinas. They come in all different types. The Kachinas generally dance from April, about this time of the year, starting up in a few weeks or so, and it runs through the summer solstice and into July, and the last dance is held sometime in July. The dances are held on at the different villages. There are about 12 villages on the Hopi Reservation, and they're spread out across 3 primary mesas. These Kachina dances are held in the plaza of the village, and the dancers wear these very bizarre masks, different types of masks. They're like circular or dome shaped or cylindrical, and some of them have feathers, and others have horns, and the hair sticking out, and different types of eyes. They might be bug-eyed, or they might just have slits for eyes or no eyes at all. But the general underlying theme is the Kachinas are spirit messengers. They're kind of like angels. They're go-betweens, they're intermediaries between the realm of humans and the realm of the gods.
And are they all good angels, Gary?
Basically, they're benevolent beings that help the people with their agricultural process. So I would say, yeah, they're basically good. They live half the year on the San Francisco Peaks, which are southwest of the Hopi Mesas. They live they go back to the San Francisco Peaks in July, and they return to the Hopi Mesas during the winter solstice. So they spend about half the year, and it's the agricultural portion of the year that they stay there, and they foster rainfall and fertility in the region. And but basically they're good angels. They're benevolent beings.
Very interesting. Let me just take a second here, Gary, and remind everybody that they're listening to InceptionRadioNetwork.com. And this is the Epic Voyages show, and we're talking to Gary David, who is a researcher and author with a lot of expertise in the Four Corners area of the southwestern U.S., and in particular the Hopi. And they're in the fourth world now, right? Is that right, Gary? They're in their fourth world out of after the third one ended?
Yeah, the Hopi have experienced the destruction of the world 3 different times. So they were living, all of us are living at the end of the fourth world, basically. The first world was destroyed by fire, some kind of volcanism, or maybe an asteroid strike. It had to do with the end of the earth, or the end of the world, due to a conflagration of some sort. And the second world started up after that. The people started to develop a civilization, but that world also was destroyed. But it was destroyed by ice, kind of a great ice age, perhaps. And the Hopi had to go down into caverns to survive this ice age. The third world was destroyed by a great flood, and of course there are flood myths all over the earth, from Sumeria, and of course the biblical flood, and the Lakota Sioux also have a flood myth.
And over in India too, I believe.
Oh, sure, yeah, it's all over the world. You find these parallel myths, not just in the Book of Genesis, but most cultures have some kind of idea that the world was destroyed by a great flood. So the Hopi escaped the destruction of this deluge by traveling on reed rafts across the Pacific Ocean.
Wow!
And there are a couple different versions, of this transition between the third world and the fourth world. One version is they went across the ocean on reed boats, and they sailed up the Colorado River, and they crawled out of the Grand Canyon. And there's another myth that says that the Hopi came up through a specific area in the Grand Canyon called the Sipapuni. It's the great reed that they crawled up from the third world to the fourth world. And they entered the Grand Canyon that way. And then they crawled up out of the Grand Canyon and began migrating across the Colorado Plateau.
Interesting. That's very interesting. Now, when we lost you a few minutes ago, I was trying to explain what I had read in your books this last couple of weeks about the relationship between the Hopi and the Anasazi. Would you like to say anything about that?
Sure. Basically, the Hopi and the Anasazi are the same people. The Anasazi is, in fact, a Navajo or Dene word. It means ancient enemy. And archaeologists use this term a lot in the 70s to refer to, the Pueblo people, the people who built pueblos or kind of stone apartment buildings all over the Southwest. The people are basically sedentary. The Anasazi were a sedentary people that grew corn, beans, and squash, the three main foods. And they lived in these stone houses, stone villages, and some are under cliffs, and so they're called cliff dwellings.
So that would be like Mesa Verde?
Mesa Verde, yeah, there's quite a few cliff dwellings there. There's another a cliff dwelling at Batatican and Keatsfield at the Navajo National Monument in the northern Arizona.
And what's the timeline on the Anasazi? Is this like thousands of years ago during this third or second world, or is that pretty recent?
The Anasazi, have been migrating around the Southwest for thousands of years. They built like smaller. They first started to congregate in pit house villages. Now, pit house is a kind of underground structure. That houses one family, and for many years they built villages that consisted of these pit houses dug into the earth, and these are the very early Anasazis. And later on, they started to build small pueblos, and then even later they constructed these larger pueblos. And probably one of the largest you find is at Chaco Canyon in northwestern New Mexico.
Yeah, that place is amazing. I'm originally from Texas, and I have spent over 25 or 30 years camping in Chaco and Jemez and the area up there in north central northern New Mexico, and there is nothing that feels, I'm sure where you live in Arizona must be similar, there's something about the land when you go to Chaco Canyon and you stand there, especially at dusk. I used to go to Casa Rinconada, which is a huge kiva, not very far from the large pueblo there, Pueblo Bonito, and I used to go there at dusk, and you really feel like you're surrounded by something else moving around you, and it's not ghosts, but it's just this intense energy. Do you feel that where you are in Arizona?
Oh, sure, yeah. The whole Southwest is kind of infused with this magical quality, and that's why a lot of the artists in the early 20th century came to Santa Fe, the area around there, and painted beautiful pictures. Georgia O'Keeffe was one of those brilliant artists that really brought out the luminescence of the landscape. I mean, it's just no other place on earth quite like it. And like you say, Chaco is an amazing place. It was a huge metropolis, an ancient metropolis in this very barren setting. There are no running water to speak of. There's no rivers close by. There's
not really any vegetation or trees to speak of either, really, anywhere around.
There might have been more trees early on when Chaco was built. Chaco was built in like the late 800s A.D. It started major construction there. So there might have been a few more trees, but they had to import. It's estimated that they imported 200,000 logs for these pueblos from over 50 miles away,
and that's without a wheel, right?
Yeah, without a wheel, they carried these logs over the ground, and they also built a road system that runs north and south for 60 miles in each direction from this ceremonial city. And, they didn't have the wheel, and these roads are arrow straight going north and south. And they're about 30 feet wide in some sections, and some of the roads have berms They go right straight over a mountain instead of going around a mountain.
Wow.
It's just an incredible series of roads that must have been ceremonial in a sense.
Well, and they obviously weren't running railroad trains or wagons up and down those roads, so...
No, this was long before that came about. So, it's an incredible place. Chaco Canyon is an incredible place. It was the largest apartment building until the 1880s, when a larger one was built in New York City. I mean,
wow,
this huge, Pueblo Bonito. I'm talking,
it is
700 to
breathtaking.
800 rooms. Yeah.
Any of you listening out there, if you have never been to the northwest corner of New Mexico, and I would suggest you go between late May and early October, because snow does fall, even though it's a desert. It is breathtaking, and it is well worth the trip. Well worth the trip. And of course, the food is wonderful.
It's a national monument. Yeah, it's a national monument. But to get there, you have to go over some gravel and dirt roads. It's not paved all the way to Chaco Canyon, so it's hard to get there. So if you have a big RV or something, I would leave that at home.
Well, actually, they have a very small campground, and people do manage somehow to get their RVs in there, because I've seen them there.
I would imagine, but it really shakes, the road shakes you.
I bet, yeah, because of the arroyos. Now, I want to ask you something, Gary, that's on my mind. I have been reading several books in the last couple of years about, Sitchin's books, for example, about previous civilizations, and some of Philip Coppen's, and I keep reading that huge giant, like, I don't mean like 10 foot, but 6 to 7 or maybe even 8 foot skeletons and mummies with red hair have been found around the world, and some of them have been found in Chaco Canyon. And we were talking about the Hopi and the Kachinas, and I'm wondering, surely those weren't the original Anasazi, were they?
No, but the Hopi have a lot of myths about giants. And some of these giants you can still see today in the form of Kachinas. The Kachina dances, the Shilako is one of them. The Zuni Pueblo in a little farther south in New Mexico from Chaco also has the Shilako dances. But the Hopi have this tradition of these whipper Kachinas, and they call them Hu Kachinas, and big mouth Kachinas, and so there's a large tradition in the Hopi culture of these giants, and some of them are cannibalistic. These giants, they're known to run off with children. Abduct children, and so it's a pretty austere and stern kind of gloomy, violent mythology that's going on there when you talk about with the giants, especially around Chaco Canyon. It seemed like that is the center of the giant culture. And it's interesting that in Chaco Canyon, there are petroglyphs or rock carvings right behind Pueblo Bonito, and these have their footprints, basically, and they have 6 toes on these footprints.
Oh, my.
And, of course, in the Bible, it says that the giants traditionally had 6 digits, 6 fingers, and 6 toes. And you actually see these petroglyphs at Chaco Canyon with 6 toes, clearly, 6 toes. And also, archaeologists have found in one of the rooms in Pueblo Bonito, there were about 700 to 800 rooms in this one structure. They actually found a foot bone with 6 toes on it. So there was
goodness.
A human walking around a Chaco that actually had 6 toes. They call it polydactyly. Is the traditional name for a person with 6 digits.
That's amazing. You brought up something else I was going to ask you about, and I was waiting for a good spot to to bring it up without zooming in from left wing here. But you mentioned cannibalism, and I can't remember where I was first reading this several years ago, but apparently that is not an uncommon archaeological find at not only Pueblo Bonito, but some of the other ruins. Now, I'm not saying it's everywhere and it's vast and lots of people's bones that have been gnawed on or all over Chaco Canyon, but that was a real surprise to me to find that out. Do you have any idea what that was about? I mean, was that invaders or?
This came up in about 1999. This idea of cannibalism in the Southwest this theory came about, and a man named a forensic archaeologist named Christy Turner at Arizona State. He wrote a book called Man Corn, and that's the Aztec term that refers to corn mixed with human flesh.
Oh my goodness! You said man corn.
Man